something extraordinary is approaching. And if you dismiss this moment as nothing more than another weekend fading into the next day, you may completely overlook one of the most powerful, energetic turning points of the entire year. There are certain moments when life seems to move in its usual rhythm, while beneath the surface, something much larger is quietly rearranging the landscape of human experience. This is one of those moments. Long before most people notice anything has changed, the shift has already begun. The doorway is already forming. The invitation has already been extended. The only question is whether you are aware enough to recognize that you are standing at the edge of it right now. As the night of June 20th gradually gives way to June 21st, a remarkable astronomical event unfolds. For a brief and almost mysterious instant, the sun reaches a point known as the solstice. The very origin of the word carries profound meaning. Derived from Latin, it translates to the sun standing still. This is not merely poetic language. It reflects a genuine celestial pause, a suspended moment in which the usual flow of movement appears to hold its breath before beginning a completely new cycle. It is as though the world itself hesitates for a heartbeat, gathering its energy before stepping into a different chapter. Then, at exactly 4:25 in the morning, universal time, another transition occurs. The sun leaves behind the restless, fast-moving atmosphere of Gemini and enters the protective, emotionally rich realm of Cancer. In that single movement, the summer solstice arrives. Cancer season officially begins. And according to the energetic pattern unfolding in the sky, this marks the height of a powerful cycle connected to home, emotional security, belonging, and love. If you have recently felt a growing desire to retreat from noise, if familiar places have started calling to you more strongly than usual, if conversations with strangers feel less important than time spent with people who truly understand your heart, there is a reason. If your own space has begun to feel sacred, if comfort has become more valuable than excitement, if you have found yourself longing for emotional safety rather than constant stimulation, these feelings are not appearing without cause. They are part of a larger current that has already begun carrying you toward this moment. The explanation behind that pull becomes clearer as the story unfolds. Before we get there, however, you need to understand why the coming days stand apart from everything else that has happened this year. Most people will move through this transition completely unaware. They will wake up on June 21st and follow their normal routines. They will sip their morning coffee, glance at their screens, continue their schedules, and never realize that something significant has shifted beneath the visible surface of reality. They will miss the deeper invitation entirely. Yet hidden within this turning point is an extraordinary blessing aimed at 3 specific signs, an opportunity so rare that it resembles a gift that appears only once in many years. The difference is that you are paying attention, you are listening, and awareness changes everything. Perhaps you have already sensed evidence that something is different. Maybe you cannot explain it logically, yet you feel it pressing quietly against the edges of your daily life. Maybe the emotional atmosphere around you has begun changing in ways that are difficult to describe. The tension that dominated recent weeks may seem weaker now. The constant noise may no longer feel as overwhelming. The frantic pace that demanded your attention may be losing its influence. None of this is accidental. For much of the previous cycle, collective energy was shaped by Gemini, a sign associated with movement, information, conversation, and endless mental activity. It scattered attention across countless directions simultaneously. People became busy, distracted, socially engaged, and mentally overstimulated. Yet a subtle turning point emerged at the beginning of June. On June 1st, Mercury, the planet governing communication, thought processes, perception, and speech, quietly entered Cancer. The effect was gradual at first. It did not arrive dramatically. Instead, it softened the emotional climate. The collective focus slowly drifted away from surface interactions and towards something far more meaningful. Memories began resurfacing. Tender emotions became harder to ignore. Familiar faces carried greater significance. The need for emotional security grew stronger. Conversations that once felt entertaining suddenly felt empty. Casual exchanges lost their appeal. Many people found themselves withdrawing from superficial connections while moving closer to relationships rooted in trust and genuine understanding. What you have been experiencing is preparation. The ground has been quietly cultivated. The emotional landscape has been softened and made ready. And now, as the sun enters Cancer at the exact moment of the solstice, every piece of that preparation becomes activated simultaneously. The energy does not arrive slowly. It arrives all at once, like a tide that suddenly rushes inland after spending weeks gathering strength beyond the horizon. This is where many people misunderstand the purpose of Cancer season. Unlike periods that encourage relentless ambition, constant productivity, or endless pursuit, this energy moves in the opposite direction. Cancer represents the sanctuary. It governs home, family, emotional nourishment, protection, and the deepest needs of the heart. The solstice amplifies that message. It creates a pause in the external world and redirects attention toward what truly sustains the soul. It asks you to stop measuring success through performance and instead reconnect with what genuinely matters. Yet even that is only part of the story. The deeper reason certain signs are approaching, a remarkable breakthrough actually began 12 days earlier. To understand the full significance of this solstice, we must return to June 9th, when a rare celestial meeting quietly initiated the chain of events that is now reaching its climax. On that day, Venus and Jupiter formed an exact conjunction at 25 degrees of Cancer. This was not merely an abstract astrological concept. It was visible in the evening sky itself. Observers could look westward and witness two brilliant lights, positioned less than 2 degrees apart, appearing so close together that they almost seemed ready to become a single star. Symbolically and energetically, that image captured the essence of what was occurring. Venus and Jupiter are traditionally known as the Great Benefics. Venus governs attraction, affection, beauty, relationships, and financial blessings. Jupiter governs expansion, prosperity, opportunity, growth, and abundance. When these two planets unite, their positive qualities reinforce one another, creating conditions where favorable outcomes can multiply. Yet this conjunction carried even greater significance because it occurred in Cancer, the sign where Jupiter is exalted. In astrology, exaltation represents a position of exceptional strength, allowing a planet to express its highest potential with unusual ease. As Jupiter moved through Cancer, its capacity to nurture growth, provide support, and deliver blessings operated at full power. The result was a powerful, energetic seed planted beneath the surface of collective experience, one that has continued developing ever since. And now, as the solstice arrives and Cancer season officially begins, that seed is approaching the moment when its effects become impossible to ignore, leading directly into the next stage of this unfolding story. There is a crucial piece of this story that many people overlook, and without it, the significance of what is unfolding right now cannot be fully understood. What began in the sky on June 9th was not merely another favorable planetary meeting. It was the beginning of a much larger process, one that has been quietly preparing the emotional landscape for the transformation now reaching its peak. When Venus came together with Jupiter, while Jupiter occupied its exalted position in Cancer, the result was considered so meaningful by ancient observers that it earned special recognition across generations of astrological tradition. For centuries, alignments of this nature were associated with periods when matters of the heart and matters of the home appeared to flourish simultaneously, creating opportunities for emotional fulfillment and material comfort to grow side by side. Yet the quality of this energy is important to understand. Unlike the dramatic intensity often associated with fire signs or the unpredictable excitement frequently linked to air signs, this influence moves differently. It does not arrive as a storm of passion or an overwhelming rush of excitement. Instead, it emerges as something quieter, steadier, and infinitely more restorative. Imagine carrying tension for so long that you forget what relaxation feels like. Imagine holding emotional armor around your heart for years, until it becomes part of your identity. Then imagine the moment that armor begins to loosen. That is the atmosphere created by this alignment. The focus is not on chaos, pursuit, or emotional turbulence. The focus is on restoration. It is on creating conditions where old emotional injuries can finally begin to soften. For many people, those injuries reach far into the past. They originate in childhood experiences, difficult relationships, disappointments, rejections, or countless moments when love felt conditional instead of secure. They come from memories of needing to prove your value before receiving acceptance. They come from years spent believing that belonging had to be earned. Under this energy, a different possibility begins to emerge. A possibility that says genuine connection does not require performance. A possibility that says safety may be closer than you think. This is why the conjunction of Venus and Jupiter was never intended to be viewed as the final event. It was the spark. It was the first signal. It was the moment a process began that would continue building momentum until the solstice arrived. Now that moment has arrived, and what started as a quiet ignition is becoming something much larger. Yet before this next stage could unfold, another preparation needed to take place, one that many people experienced without consciously realizing it. Something subtle happened within the physical body itself. The emotional and spiritual shifts that had been gathering beneath the surface required a stronger foundation before they could fully manifest. That preparation arrived on June 19th, when Chiron entered Taurus. At first glance, many people underestimate the significance of this movement because Chiron travels slowly and rarely produces dramatic headlines. Yet its influence often operates at a deeply personal level. Chiron is known as the wounded healer, a symbol of both pain and the wisdom gained through healing. For the past 8 years, Chiron moved through Aries, guiding humanity through an extended confrontation with identity, individuality, courage, and the difficult question of self-acceptance. It challenged people to examine whether they felt entitled to exist as their authentic selves. It exposed insecurities connected to confidence, independence, and personal worth. For many, the process was exhausting because it required facing parts of themselves they had spent years avoiding. Now that cycle is beginning to close. As Chiron steps into Taurus, the focus changes dramatically. Taurus governs the physical world. It is connected to the body, the senses, financial stability, security, comfort, self-esteem, and the tangible foundations that support daily life. This shift changes the nature of healing itself. Rather than concentrating primarily on identity, attention turns toward embodiment. Suddenly, the body becomes part of the conversation. The need for rest becomes more noticeable. The desire for nourishment grows stronger. Many people may find themselves longing for slower rhythms, healthier routines, greater stability, and a deeper sense of comfort within their own skin. They may become increasingly aware of how exhaustion has accumulated over time. They may realize how long they have been surviving instead of truly living. These experiences are not separate from the larger story. They are part of it. Chiron's entrance into Taurus begins anchoring emotional and spiritual developments into physical reality. It encourages healing to move beyond ideas and become something tangible. The timing makes this transition especially remarkable. Chiron entered Taurus exactly 48 hours before the solstice. Viewed symbolically, it appears almost as if the cosmos prepared the container before delivering what would fill it. First came the stabilization of the body. Then came the opening of the gateway. The sequence matters because blessings can only be fully received when there is enough capacity to hold them. And now all of these separate threads begin converging into a single extraordinary moment. The morning of June 21st contains a concentration of astrological activity unlike anything else unfolding this decade. Multiple influences arrive together, creating a powerful convergence of cardinal energy that amplifies the significance of everything occurring. The first shift arrives at 4:20 in the morning when the Sun enters 0 degrees Cancer. This marks the official beginning of Cancer season and the exact arrival of the solstice itself. Astronomically, it represents the moment when the northern hemisphere reaches its greatest tilt toward the Sun, producing the longest day of the year and the height of available daylight. Astrologically, it signals an immediate redirection of collective focus. The restless curiosity and outward engagement associated with Gemini give way to a far more intimate concern. Attention turns inward. Priorities become clearer. Emotional roots, family ties, personal history, and the meaning of home suddenly occupy center stage. Beneath all of it lies one defining question. What truly makes you feel secure? Before people have much time to process this shift, another influence arrives. At 5:50 in the morning, the newly entered Sun forms a harmonious sextile with Chiron in Taurus. Though gentle in appearance, this aspect opens a meaningful pathway for healing. The Sun symbolizes vitality, identity, and the essential self. Chiron symbolizes wounds, lessons, and the capacity for transformation through healing. When these energies connect, understanding becomes possible. Pain and purpose stop appearing as opposites and begin revealing their hidden relationship. Many people may experience insights that seem surprisingly simple, yet profoundly liberating. They may begin realizing that worthiness is not something earned through perfection. They may discover that vulnerability possesses a strength they previously underestimated. They may recognize that authentic connection often emerges not from flawless presentation, but from the courage to reveal what is real beneath the surface. Then the story intensifies once again. Later that same day, the first quarter moon in Libra introduces an entirely different requirement. While Cancer emphasizes emotional awareness and Chiron encourages healing, Libra demands participation. Libra governs relationships, commitment, cooperation, balance, and partnership. A first quarter moon creates momentum through challenge. It pushes situations toward movement. Under this influence, longing alone is no longer sufficient. Wanting connection is not enough. Hoping for stability is not enough. Feeling ready is not enough. Action becomes necessary. Conversations must happen. Boundaries must be established. Decisions must be made. Steps must be taken. In a single day, the Sun, Chiron, and the Moon each contribute a different ingredient to the same unfolding process. One opens the emotional gateway. One offers healing. One requires movement. Together, they create the mechanism through which the larger blessing can emerge. Yet as powerful as this energy may be, its effects do not distribute themselves evenly. The geometric relationships formed by these planetary movements create a particularly strong resonance with 3 specific signs. And that is where the next chapter of this story begins. Pay close attention now, because this is where the story becomes personal. Up until this point, we have been talking about collective currents, about movements in the sky that influence everyone in some way. But the truth is that not every sign receives the same message from the cosmos. Certain signs are standing directly beneath the brightest beam of this energy, and for them the effects are not subtle. They are life-changing. If your chart carries one of these placements, especially your Sun, Moon, or rising sign, you may soon look back on this period as the moment a completely different chapter began. For Cancer, The significance of this solstice cannot be overstated. Every major influence we have discussed is concentrating its power into the most intimate and defining area of your chart, the realm connected to identity, vitality, self-expression, and the way you move through the world. Think about everything that has been building over recent months. Jupiter has already been traveling through your sign, expanding opportunities and opening doors that may not have seemed possible before. Now, the arrival of the solstice activates an even deeper layer of that story. As the sun enters Cancer and initiates your solar return period, the spotlight shifts directly onto you. It is as though the universe is asking you to step forward and finally occupy the space you were always meant to claim. The conjunction of Venus and Jupiter that occurred on June 9th did not happen in some distant or disconnected part of your chart. It happened in the very place associated with your sense of self. Now, with the sun arriving and amplifying that energy, your natural qualities become impossible to ignore. What makes this so remarkable is that the gifts being highlighted are the very traits many Cancers have spent years questioning. Your compassion, your emotional awareness, your ability to care deeply, your instinct to nurture and protect. During more difficult seasons, these qualities may have felt like liabilities. You may have wondered whether being sensitive made life harder. You may have questioned whether your heart was too open for a world that often rewards detachment. Yet now the tide turns. Suddenly, the characteristics you once worried about become magnetic. People begin responding to your authenticity. Opportunities appear because others recognize something genuine within you. There is no need to prove yourself, no need to compete for attention, no need to force outcomes. The attraction occurs naturally because your energy is aligned with who you truly are. For Cancer individuals who are single, this creates a powerful opening for meaningful connection. Rather than relationships built on uncertainty or performance, there is potential for encounters rooted in immediate recognition and emotional honesty. The feeling is not one of chasing, it is one of being seen. For those already committed to a relationship, a different blessing begins unfolding. Areas that previously felt heavy may start softening. Old frustrations lose their intensity. Emotional distance becomes easier to bridge. Support replaces strain. Understanding replaces defensiveness. What emerges is a renewed sense of partnership built upon genuine care. Yet relationships are only part of the story. Financially, another development begins taking shape as Venus and later Jupiter move into Leo, activating the area of your chart associated with resources, income, confidence, and personal value. As this process unfolds, stability becomes easier to establish. Opportunities for growth begin appearing. The practical foundations needed to create the secure home environment you have long desired become increasingly attainable. In many ways, Cancer is being invited to receive everything they have spent years trying to create for others. Then we arrive at Aries, and the experience could not feel more different. In fact, the unfamiliarity of it is exactly what makes it so important. Aries energy is naturally oriented toward action. It seeks movement, challenge, achievement, and forward momentum. It thrives in situations that require courage and decisive leadership. Yet this solstice redirects attention away from external victories and into territory that many Aries individuals rarely prioritize. The concentration of Cancer energy lands in the fourth house, the area connected with family, home life, emotional roots, ancestry, and the deepest layers of psychological security. The Sun enters this region. Mercury is already present. The powerful Venus and Jupiter conjunction contributes its blessings here as well. Together, they create a profound invitation to turn inward. Rather than asking what you can conquer next, the universe asks a different question. What needs healing within the place you call home? This influence functions almost like a cleansing force, moving through old emotional spaces that have remained untouched for years. Family tensions that lingered beneath the surface may finally begin resolving. Long-standing emotional burdens can start losing their hold. Memories that once carried pain may reveal wisdom instead. Patterns inherited from the past become visible so they can be released. For many Aries individuals, the result is a growing sense of emotional peace that feels unfamiliar precisely because it is so genuine. There is a warmth here that cannot be achieved through accomplishment alone. For Aries already sharing life with a partner, the magic of this period is found in ordinary moments, not through grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but through the quiet rituals that create trust. Preparing meals together, creating traditions, protecting shared peace. Building an environment where both people feel safe enough to be themselves. For single Aries individuals, the energy points toward a different possibility. There is potential for a connection that feels deeply familiar from the beginning. Not because it is exciting in a chaotic way, but because it offers emotional safety. It honors the softer side of your nature that few people ever get to see. Then, as Venus and Jupiter eventually enter Leo and illuminate the area of romance, creativity, pleasure, and joy, a new chapter begins. The atmosphere becomes lighter. Love becomes more expressive. Happiness becomes easier to share. For some, this period may even correspond with meaningful developments involving children or family expansion. Finally, we come to Capricorn, where the significance of this solstice reaches an entirely different level. Capricorn occupies the opposite side of the zodiac from Cancer, and because of that polarity, every major movement occurring in Cancer sends powerful waves directly into Capricorn territory. Capricorn is traditionally associated with achievement, responsibility, long-term goals, and the pursuit of lasting success. It often directs tremendous energy toward building something meaningful in the public world. Yet the Cancer solstice redirects attention toward relationships. Specifically, it activates the seventh house, the domain of committed partnerships, marriage, contracts, and significant one-to-one bonds. This is important because Capricorn rarely enters relationships impulsively. Trust is earned gradually. Commitments are approached seriously. Emotional investments are made with caution and intention. The rewards of that approach become especially visible under the June 2026 sky. The Venus and Jupiter conjunction occurring within this relationship sector represents one of the most favorable partnership influences available all year. It expands opportunities for connection, strengthens existing bonds, and creates conditions where commitment can flourish. For many Capricorns, this energy feels like confirmation that patience was worthwhile. Relationships become infused with optimism and possibility. Existing commitments gain new depth. Future plans begin taking shape more clearly. The symbolism here strongly supports milestones associated with long-term partnership, engagements, weddings, shared living arrangements, formal agreements, renewed promises, decisions that transform a relationship from possibility into reality. The energy encourages people to build something lasting rather than temporary. And as these developments continue unfolding, the larger miracle promised by this solstice becomes increasingly visible, revealing why this particular season holds such extraordinary significance for those standing directly within its path. What makes this period so remarkable is that some of the most important changes do not arrive with fanfare. They develop quietly beneath the surface until one day they become impossible to deny. For Capricorn, that truth may become especially clear now. A relationship that has been evolving gradually, perhaps so gradually that you questioned whether meaningful progress was happening at all, is approaching a turning point. What once felt uncertain begins taking shape. What once seemed undefined starts revealing structure. The connection gains weight, direction, and permanence. Suddenly, conversations become more serious. Future plans become more tangible. the possibility of building something lasting no longer feels like a distant dream. It feels real. Yet there is another layer to this story. As the month approaches its conclusion, Mercury prepares to turn retrograde within this same partnership sector. For Capricorn, this often corresponds with the reappearance of someone whose influence never completely disappeared. A familiar name, a familiar face, or an unfinished emotional chapter may return seeking resolution. The true gift is not simply the return itself. The deeper blessing lies in recognizing how much growth has occurred since the last chapter ended. Time has done its work. Lessons have been learned. Wounds have softened. The circumstances that once prevented alignment may no longer exist. What seemed impossible before may finally become possible now, because both people have evolved enough to meet each other differently. Yet even if Cancer, Aries, or Capricorn are not among your primary placements, the story does not end there. The solstice sends waves throughout the entire zodiac, touching every sign in a unique way. Taurus receives support through themes of stability, devotion, and reliability. The kind of love that grows slowly and proves itself through consistency becomes especially important. At the same time, Chiron's entrance into Taurus marks the beginning of an extended healing journey centered on self-value, self-respect, and the restoration of personal worth. Pisces experiences the influence through romance, inspiration, and creative expression. What begins as friendship could gradually reveal deeper emotional potential. Scorpio finds it easier to lower protective walls and trust someone who demonstrates loyalty through action rather than promises, while professional recognition continues building behind the scenes. Gemini carries the momentum of the new moon that occurred earlier this month, a moment that symbolized a fresh personal cycle. Now the challenge becomes raising expectations and refusing to settle for connections that fail to honor your value. Leo stands on the edge of a major expansion period. Venus arrives first, followed by Jupiter, opening a powerful 13-month chapter of visibility, confidence, attraction, and opportunity that will influence the entire year ahead. Virgo discovers that meaningful connection may be hiding closer than expected. Social circles, friendships, and familiar communities become fertile ground for emotional developments. Libra experiences the first quarter moon directly within its sign on Solstice Day, encouraging decisive movement and visible progress in important relationships. Sagittarius is guided toward deeper intimacy and greater trust through experiences involving shared resources and emotional vulnerability. Aquarius encounters relationship growth through everyday acts of dedication, the quiet gestures of care that often matter far more than dramatic declarations. Every sign participates in this story. No one remains completely untouched by the energies unfolding now. Yet there is an important truth that many people overlook when discussing moments like this. The peak itself is only part of the journey. What follows afterward is equally significant. In fact, the days immediately after the solstice may determine whether the opportunities created now develop into something lasting. This is where the narrative becomes more complex. A few days after the solstice, the cosmos begins asking a more demanding question. Is what you are building rooted in reality, or is it sustained only by emotion? On June 25th, Venus forms a supportive trine with Saturn. This aspect functions like an anchor. It takes the inspiration, excitement, and hope generated during the solstice period and asks whether they can withstand the test of time. Romantic feelings are encouraged to become commitments. Promises are encouraged to become actions. Aspirations are encouraged to become plans. This influence supports practical decisions involving relationships, property, finances, and long-term security because it combines emotional sincerity with mature responsibility. However, the same day introduces a very different influence. The Sun forms a square to Neptune, creating a temporary atmosphere of uncertainty. Clarity becomes harder to maintain. Idealism grows stronger. Imagination can become so persuasive that it begins competing with reality. Under this influence, it becomes easy to project hopes onto situations rather than seeing them as they truly are. Romantic fantasies may feel convincing. Assumptions may appear factual. Emotional desire may disguise itself as intuition. This is why wisdom becomes essential. During the approximately 48-hour period surrounding this aspect, patience is valuable. Ask additional questions. Gather information. Confirm details. Allow reality to reveal itself fully before making irreversible decisions. A meaningful sign will remain meaningful even after closer examination. Then the final chapter of June arrives. On June 29th, Mercury stations retrograde in Cancer. This opens a 3-week period focused on reflection, revision, and healing. Family relationships may require attention. Conversations left unfinished may finally occur. Long-hidden emotions may find expression. For many people, the concept of home itself undergoes re-evaluation. Simultaneously, only hours later, a full moon in Capricorn arrives as a balancing force. While recent weeks have emphasized emotional security and private life, this lunation redirects attention toward career responsibilities, long-term ambitions, and practical achievement. It serves as a reminder that nurturing personal happiness does not require abandoning professional goals. Both dimensions must remain in balance. Then another major shift appears on the horizon. On June 30th, Jupiter leaves Cancer and enters Leo for the first time since 2014. This transition marks the beginning of a completely new cycle that extends for approximately 13 months, carrying its influence into the summer of 2027. The significance of this movement is difficult to exaggerate. Jupiter in Cancer emphasized emotional foundations, family connections, private life, and personal security. Jupiter in Leo changes the focus entirely. The spotlight turns outward. Creativity expands. Confidence increases. Leadership becomes more visible. Self-expression grows bolder. Joy becomes something meant to be shared rather than protected. For fire signs and air signs in particular, this shift opens a powerful pathway toward recognition, opportunity, and visible success. It encourages risk-taking rooted in confidence rather than fear. It supports creative pursuits, public achievements, and the willingness to occupy center stage. Looking back at the complete story, a clear progression emerges. First came the healing. Then came the return to emotional truth. Then came the effort to create stability and strengthen foundations. Only after those steps were completed did the next invitation appear. The invitation to step forward and shine. Which brings us back to the question that has quietly followed this entire journey. Why have you been feeling drawn toward home? Why have familiar faces become more important? Why has silence felt more nourishing than noise? Why has emotional safety mattered more than constant activity? The answer is simpler than many realize. You have been responding to an energetic realignment already unfolding beneath the surface. The same cardinal water influences shaping powerful experiences for Cancer, Aries, and Capricorn have been working through your life as well. They have been encouraging release, encouraging grounding, encouraging healing, encouraging you to stop carrying burdens that never belonged to you in the first place. Many people will pass through this solstice without recognizing what happened. Months later, they may wonder why circumstances changed so dramatically. Yet some individuals sensed the transition long before it became obvious. They felt the shift before they could explain it. They recognized the subtle movement before there was language to describe it. If that sounds familiar, then trust that awareness. It is not accidental. It is part of the reason this moment resonates so deeply. Today the sun reaches its sacred pause. For a brief instant, the rhythm changes. A doorway that appears only once each year opens before you. What accompanies you into the next chapter depends on the choices you make now, the relationships you nurture, the boundaries you establish, the security you create, the love you finally allow yourself to accept. The opportunity is present. The invitation has already arrived. And after everything that has prepared you for this moment, you may be far more ready than you realize. Thank you for spending this time here and sharing in this journey. If this message resonated with you, consider supporting the channel by subscribing for future content. Your presence is deeply appreciated. Feel free to share your thoughts and personal experiences in the comments. Until we meet again, take care of yourself and stay open to the wisdom that the next chapter may bring.